What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted, a show that brings you professionals from all walks of life, touching on their backstory, their mindset, and how they navigate through adversity and opposition, while providing you practical tips that might help you on your path. I'm your host, two-time Olympian, Olympic bronze medalist, author, and motivational speaker, Akeem Haynes. Now, let's get into the episode. This week on the show, he's represented his country of the Cayman Islands at 3 Olympic Games and 7 World Championships. He was an All-American and still the current record holder in long jump at Rice University, multiple All-American honors. And just a few short months ago in August, he was inducted into the Southwest Conference Hall of Fame for what he was able to accomplish and do at Rice University. He's also the only athlete behind Carl Lewis to have ran sub 10 seconds in 100 meters and leaped over 8.5 meters in the long jump. He is right now the current associate head coach of the University of Texas at San Antonio. This week on the show, I'm joined by Coach Kareem Street-Thompson. Had a great conversation with Coach Kareem. We dove into the ups and downs of his journey as an athlete, both on the track and off of the track, the start of his coaching career, some of the challenges that he faced along that time, and also the type of man that he strives to be and chooses to be every single day. I always heard a lot about Coach Kareem from different coaches and the respect that they have for him. A lot of his foundation from who he is today was established from his childhood, and we get into all of that as well. But do me a favor and leave a rating and review of the show wherever you can leave podcast reviews. So with all that being said, enjoy this week's episode with Coach Kareem Street-Thompson. Man, I'm looking forward to our conversation, Coach. First, I thank you for your time. I know it's in the height of the season and the beginning of it, and a lot of things is moving, man. But I want to start here, Coach. I'm a firm believer in gratitude. You know, I think when you can start your day, finish your day with something to be grateful and thankful for, man, it's hard to find yourself in a negative state. So first question, Coach, give me 3 things you're grateful for today.
Waking up.
Oh, come on now.
Waking up this morning. It cannot be overstated. It just can't. We're living in different times.
Yeah.
I mean, and if anyone were to stop and put things in perspective, I think everybody could probably share that same sentiment. Thankful for my family, that they're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful that I have a job. I'm thankful that I have a way to put food on my plate, on my family's. I'm proud to be able to feed my family. And again, yeah, I mean, it's the little things, man. You get to this point and you start to appreciate the little things.
Coach, you've had a lot of things happen to you over the years, and I was trying to think about how I want to start this conversation. But then something recently happened in your life, right? Southwest Conference Hall of Fame inductee, right? Rice University, and I've been knowing about you for quite some time, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But for the work that you're able to do at Rice, I mean, 661 in the 60, 1016, 821 long jump indoors, 863 outdoors, all of those things. Every person wants to feel appreciated and respected for what they do in any profession. But when that happened, Coach, not everybody always gets that type of recognition, but what did that moment feel like for you, and what did it represent for you?
I didn't even know that the Southwest Conference Hall of Fame existed until I think it was a couple of years ago, and I think they Coach Leroy Burrell was inducted, and I remember going, wow, the Southwest Conference was over back in '95, and I thought it was very special that they were recognizing or still recognizing athletes from that era.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, that conference was the SEC before the SEC. And all you have to do is go back and look at the results, at the accomplishments. The mindset back then was if you finished top 8 in the conference. At the conference meet, you were
Mm-hmm.
going to nationals.
Mm-hmm.
That was just how good. When you take the best schools in the state of Texas and add Arkansas to that, I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking blood and guts, man. You're
Mm-hmm.
talking, I mean, every single year. Um, but the part that was amazing about it was that, you know, so we also supported. There was also a recognition that if there was a school from Texas doing things at the national meet, we were all, supportive of that.
Yeah.
So there was a solidarity, you know. That's just, a situation where you think about an era where conferences were focused on the geographical location as opposed to now where it's literally, who's the highest bidder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very, very proud of that moment. Very proud, and that that Rice, because what happens is each university puts forward a nominee,
Yes.
right?
Wow.
So Rice thought it was pertinent to put my name forward this year, and yeah, I mean, very proud of it.
I mean, what you were able to do during that time, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But I want to start in the present time and then work our way forwards. Right? You've been a coach now for quite some time, and most people probably in this era, they know you as Coach Kareem. But your journey and career did not start at where you are now at the University of Texas, San Antonio. But the first time, like I remember seeing you with the Missouri hat on, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
not not every athlete turns into a coach or actually becomes a good coach, right? But what made you wanted to go that route, and what inspired that? Because it's easy to fall back on because we're so used to it. You go and do it, but when you're a coach, it's not just about you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I will say this: not every former athlete is cut out to be a coach. Um, and you know, I would have to take it back to the beginning. My
Yeah,
my family growing when I grew up in Cayman, my family was a family of teachers. My mother was a teacher. My great aunt, great uncle, all my mom's friends, the extended family. That was just what I grew up around. When I got to Rice, my jumps coach was a teacher. Like he was much more very professorial.
yeah,
He was Chinese, but I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing. He's very detailed. When you move on, and then I moved on to Coach Paff, another teacher.
yeah,
God knows, I mean, how many doctoral uh, degrees that man could have if he wanted.
yeah, yeah,
So having gone through that, and having, being taught and being coached by coaches that actually wanted me to learn what we were doing.
mm,
Being able to sit with Dan, stand over his shoulder and watch him go to work and asking those intricate questions. Why are we doing this workout on this day? Why are we doing, weights on this day? How are you structuring the workouts based on what time of the year it is? All those little things, I think Dan realized pretty early on that I was in tune with what he was doing. And you know, because we didn't have the money to be able to have him over to Europe with us all the time, he coached us to coach ourselves. He coached us to learn how to put together our own programs. And when we got over to, let's just say we were over there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, being able to structure each day, being able to, plan for each race. I mean, he dropped a wealth of knowledge on all of us in that group.
yeah,
And for me, I mean, it was clear. It was clear what I was going to do next. I thought about being an agent. I thought about going into other areas of the sport, but I mean, it was clear to me. So my last 2 or 3 years with Dan, he would actually send athletes over to me and have me kind of coach him up a little bit.
yeah,
And I volunteered for 3 years at Florida. I volunteered for 3 years at Florida State. So during my transition, it was about 6 years where I just hung back a bit and watched some of the best coaches in the biz do their thing. And the best piece of advice, Dan gave me, I remember when I asked him when the Mizzou opportunity came up, I said, what advice well, actually, it was before that. When I was volunteering at Florida State, I said, hey, I think this is what I'm going to be doing. What is your advice? And he said, pick up a rake. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, what does that mean, Dan?
Pick up a shovel, pick up a hurdle, right? Pick up the cones, clean up after practice, rake the pit. He's like, Kareem, you have spent 20 plus years of your life being catered to, right? Being a coach means you are now the one. You are now a servant to your athletes. You are now the one making sure everything is in place for them. You're trying to make things as simple as possible for them, where they can show up, warm up, get their workout done, get their weights done, and get out of there.
Yeah.
Right? All that groundwork has to be done. Right? And yeah, I mean, for about 3 years, it was tough sledding. It was humbling. It was, to be, to still have this mentality. I'm a 3-time Olympian. I've done all these things. And I'm being told to go rake a pit. I'm being told to do all. And yeah, was it hard? Yeah, it was absolutely hard. But I knew that I had to do it. I had to turn that corner. And, now I'm at a point now where even though I have volunteers and I have people that are, willing to help, I'm still there first. And I'm still setting up practice. I'm still doing those things. And, as long as my body allows me to do it, I mean, that's just how I approach it. So yeah, I mean, that's how it all started.
Coach Kareem, you have this, and other people have told me as well too. When they talk about you, you have the spirit of service, right? And not thinking that you're too higher. Sometimes people fall in love with a title and they forget, like, you didn't always have that title. I'm wondering where did the spirit of adaptability, service come from? You mentioned your mom was an educator. What was one of those things that your mom told you that maybe always stuck with you?
That's actually I did a lot of watching. Let's put it that way. And I don't know about your era, but in our era, there was a lot of sit down, shut up, be quiet, right?
Yeah.
Don't ask questions. This is right. So what I can say is that the household I grew up in, and then when my mom remarried and we have I have two brothers. I was 7 years old at this time, and the house we moved into and all of that. Both of those experiences, both of those homes were homes where people gravitated to. And both of those homes were people that, were going through trials, tribulations, that sort of thing. I don't know. It was like a constant situation where, my mom or my dad, there was someone that was, down and out, family member or whatever. There's always that room that was occupied.
Yeah.
Right. And the whole idea was, hey, if you need to take refuge, if you needed to, take some time to sort yourself out, you've just, family that just moved to Jamaica, from Jamaica to Cayman, trying to get things together. We tended to be those people, and that's, when I look at my mom's life, I mean, she spent her life giving.
Yeah.
That's just what she did. So I didn't have a choice. To this day, I mean, if I told you how many former athletes, from the collegiate world, from my collegiate career, from my wife's collegiate career, that have somehow found themselves back, or come back to us and said, hey, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. We recently had a young lady that decided to come here and to have her child, and
Yeah.
it's really like uh you don't think about it. You just help, right? And yeah, for some people, they might look at it and go, man, like how do you do this? How do you find time to do this? And it's not even about that. Like I would expect that if I reached out to my friends, my family, that sort of thing,
They do the same.
that they would do the same. So yeah, it's just our life. It's just the way it is.
As a coach, you a good coach, you aren't just a coach, right? Especially when you're working with athletes, and all people, you got to wear different hats at times, right? Because you got to come in, they may be going through something, maybe they don't trust you enough to communicate, and then maybe they do when they open up, and you got to take off that coaching hat and kind of be the mentor, the friend. But then you have to take both of those away, and then you have to go be a husband, and you have to be a dad. I know your wife, she works with you guys as well too, but how do you balance all of those hats and energy? Because it's challenging at times.
Um, at this point, it is literally all immersed. I mean, my kids know my athletes.
Yeah.
It it's woven into the fabric of our lives. And you know, I don't even know if the word balance exists.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, and at the end of the day, like I've got to make sure that my kids get what they need, the emotional support, all of that. Um, I've got to make sure my athletes are, aren't stressed out. I've got to make sure that, and what I tend to do is, there aren't enough hours in the day, and there never will
Yeah.
be, right? So, what I tend to do is, and thanks to, what Dan taught me, when Dan explained to me that coaching starts from the minute the athlete enters the track, before you even address them. If you are paying attention and watching body language,
Yeah.
watching their faces, watching, their whether they're slumped over or whether they're, just walking really slowly, that sort of thing, you can pretty much ascertain what's going on before you even step to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has been a very, very valuable tool for me because, you know, traditionally, it's a situation where, it might be an office meeting, right? Or, hey, coach, can I talk to you for a second? Or
Yeah.
something like that. And that's a now that's an hour of your day that you're now spending with that person. Now, it's a different situation when, you know, if it's someone that's not trying to or isn't equipped to communicate that to you, right? You kind of have to pull it out of them. I have pretty much mastered the art now where I am, I might walk up and I'll just say, "Hey, are you all right?"
Yeah.
And just my intonation alone is enough for them to, everything comes out, you know. And I've been very fortunate to be able to be that perceptive, to kind of cut things off before it gets to critical mass.
Yeah.
And I express it to my kids all the time. I mean, of course, it's not always going to be that simple because, another thing I've learned is that, for the athletes that didn't know who I was before they came here, and they get here, and then the kids that have been here start telling them who I am or what I've
Yeah.
done. All of a sudden now it's like, because they're like, oh my goodness, he's been to 3 Olympics, he's done all these things. So I really can't screw up out here, you know? So it creates a different dynamic. So now all of a sudden they're kind of hiding in plain sight now. They're kind of
Trying to
like,
be, yes.
you know, in the back. And I'm kind of having to pull them out and go, hey, it's okay. It's okay. We're all gonna make mistakes, right? So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic.
Well, as you just said, Coach, kids have short-term memories. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes they don't remember or even go to look to search up to see who is in front of them or who is in the room. But let's go back a bit to your Rice days, right? What do you remember most about your time at Rice and just the NCAA system and that adjustment? Because it's a grind. You know what I'm saying? Like once you get to it, it's a grind. You talked about your time, that being the SEC conference, right? And it's week after week, and it can be grueling, and the losses can add up, and you can get frustrated. You're trying to learn all these different things. What do you remember most about your time there? How did you deal with that pressure?
Well, my how I got to Rice is unique in itself.
Tell me that crazy story. Dan was telling me about it, but we didn't have time to finish.
Yeah, so essentially, you have to understand that there was no emails, no social media, no
Yes.
cell phones, text, none of that existed, right? So in my junior year, um, I jumped uh I jumped 805
Wow.
my junior year. Yeah, 16, 17. But anyway, I got third at the World U20 Championships in 1990, and at that point, I thought I could go anywhere I wanted to go, right? So but I had no idea, no way of getting in touch with the coaches or anything like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
I'm meeting with my high school counselor, and she says, "Okay, what are your top three schools?" And I'm like, Houston, Southern Cal, Stanford, right?
Good
Southern
school.
Cal and Houston, because that was where the '84 Olympics were
Yeah.
in the Coliseum. Back then, the track was in the Coliseum. And then Carl Lewis trained at Houston. He competed for Houston, trained at Houston. No brainer.
Made sense.
That's my idol. That's where I'm
Yeah.
going to go. And then Stanford, my mom was a teacher, of course. So I'm like, here's kind of the happy
Yep.
medium,
Yep.
you know, good academic school, good athletic school. Perfect. So I had no way of contacting the coaches. So what I ended up doing was I wrote 3 letters to the registrar's office.
What'd you say in the letter? Just, hey, I'm Kareem Street-Thompson. I jumped this. Interested in coming here.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
pretty
Of
much. And those letters went in the garbage. It went to the admissions office.
course they did.
So, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, no response. And I'm like, come on, like,
Yeah.
really? So I'm thinking that they just disregarded me. I'm not realizing that these letters never even made it to the coach's office. So I get upset at this point, and I said, all right, that's how you're going to do it. I'm going to find the smallest school in Division 1, and I'm going to put that school on the map.
Mm.
So back then there was a university encyclopedia where you could go through. So I went and found the smallest school, and it was Rice University. So
Wow.
I'm looking through the profile, and it's in Houston, Texas. So it's about 10 minutes down the road from Houston. And I'm like, okay, hot weather, varsity track, let's go.
Mm.
End of story. Okay.
Yep.
So I wrote a letter to Rice, and the liaison between athletics and academics worked in the registrar's office. Remember, Rice only had 2,500 students at the time. Okay. So someone literally hand delivered the letter to him. He then walks it over to the coach's office. Coach opens a letter, and the number 3 jumper in the world, under 20, wants to be a Rice Owl.
Of course.
So he's a little incredulous at this point, right? And so he goes over to the women's head coach, Victor Lopez, who happened to be the main official at the long jump when I got third.
Mm, what is the
Victor was,
odds of that?
has and always will, big up with IAAF at the time, former NACAC president. So they're like, Victor, some guy named Kareem Street-Thompson wants to, and he was like, he's legit,
Sign him. Yeah.
sign him. So long story short, took all my visits anyway. Iowa and Minnesota brought me in January. I don't know what they were thinking.
You was already out. You was already out
It
before
was
you even got.
done. It was Cool Runnings part 2 and 3, right? And then
Yeah.
George Mason and Alabama were the other schools I visited. But I was sold. I was going to Rice, period. Now, did anyone tell me that Rice was de facto Ivy League? Nope. Did
Mm,
anyone tell me that, when you go to a school with only 2,500 and you go to the Olympics your sophomore year, that you're probably going to have a microscope on you?
mm,
Did anyone tell me that pretty much the people I was going to class with were future millionaires, CEOs of companies, doctors, lawyers, that sort of thing? No.
mm.
I had no there was no way to prepare me for the culture shock that hit me when I got there. And it took me, it was 3 semesters before that everything just dropped. 1992 is that year that really set the tone for the rest of my career. Um, got hurt indoors, somehow got healthy enough, won conference, went to indoor nationals, placed third or fourth, something like that. Um, went to outdoor nationals, fouled out. That summer I went to the Olympics. In Barcelona, that was my first Olympics.
Yeah.
I was prepared for that. No way, shape, or form. I was supposed to go to World Juniors later that year. It was in September. That was actually the year that Otto Bolden said "Hello, world."
Yes.
So the day I'm flying back to go to Rice, because it was about a 2 week period where I'd have to wait before I went to Seoul, Korea for World Juniors. I get a letter saying that I've been suspended for grades. So it was
Uh,
literally all those things just piled on each other. And then the final piece of the puzzle was Cayman then decided they didn't want to send me. So all those things happened in 92. And when I tell you, when I walked into that dark room, and when I stepped out of that dark room, it was like, enough of this. So 93, I ended up number 4 in the world. 94, I was number 2 in the world. And my senior year, I was ranked number 4 in the world, just back to back to back. And, got my degree on time, but those first 3 semesters at Rice, oh my gosh. I mean, I cringe to think about, in this era, in the transfer portal era,
where you can leave. Yeah.
how many kids would actually have said, yes, I'm gonna come back and then I'm gonna do this, right? Um, but I wouldn't be where I'm at now had I not gone through that.
How did you pull yourself out of that year? Right? Because when you have so many attacks again and again and again and again, you might say, man, this is stupid. I'm going back home. How did you pull yourself out
Mhm.
of that?
Well, it's funny you should say that because, coming from Cayman, I witnessed a lot of friends that, so in Cayman, like Miami, Orlando, Tampa, those are like Cayman 2.0,
Yeah.
right? Like it's an hour flight away. It was nothing to go, for a weekend shopping spree. Just get on the plane, go there, get your shopping, come back. So I had friends from high school that would go off to college, and within a year, they're back home, they're homesick, right? All of this stuff. And for me, that wasn't an option.
Mm.
It wasn't an option. And at no point did I ever feel like, you know, I'm going to quit on this. Never, and um, but I'm going to tell you this. I mean, that day when that letter showed up at the house and the look on my parents' faces, like I was not raised, there was no hope. They didn't hope that I succeed,
Yeah.
right? I was going to succeed. And the umbrella and the support system that I had in Cayman, I mean, it was unbelievable. Like it extended throughout the entire island. I couldn't go anywhere without someone like, hey, you're Valerie Thompson's son, right? Yeah, yes.
Mm.
That sort of thing. So, you know, yes, there was shame, there was embarrassment, there was, I mean, you add all that up, and like I said, I mean, I literally was sitting in a dark room, with all my thoughts and with all the emotions and all of that, and I literally said, enough, not happening, you know. And so, but it was a major building block for my collegiate, my the rest of my collegiate career, and then my professional career.
It reminds me of when I was at Alabama, and when I got there from Barton, I didn't do anything different, but the schedule was different. I wasn't used to conference being Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but you're leaving the week before, and all these different
Mm-hmm.
things, and the classes. You're going into a classroom and there's 500 kids, and the teacher doesn't care if you're there or not. And at Barton,
Mm-hmm.
there's 25 people there. So for me, I was like, yo, how? And my GPA fell from like a 3.2 to a 1.9. And I said, man, this
Mm-hmm.
is not okay. And so I just took
No.
summer school. So I 100% understand that. What I don't think sometimes people understand, right, is when you leave the collegiate system now, it's a whole different thing going to the pros. From a business standpoint, on the professional level, you were at the Olympics before. When you finished school, what was that transition like for you at that time?
So this is where like you have to understand, like I went on the circuit in 93.
Yes.
So 93 and 94, my last 2 years in college, I was over in Europe during the summer. And so the transition was pretty easy.
You're already used to it.
I was already used to the grind. I was already used to, the difference was, um, when you going over there, knowing that you're back in that safe place in the fall, and all of a sudden that safe place isn't there now. Now you've got to pay your mortgage, your car note, you've got to feed yourself, and welcome to the big bad world. Like that was a transition that, I mean, it took me some time to figure out. And I don't think that I truly understood, how to manage myself, financially. I mean, I definitely could have used help,
Yeah.
and someone to kind of say, hey, if you're making X, Y, and Z, you need to put X, Y, and Z away, and you need to live this way.
Yes.
And so was there a point in time where I was reckless? Absolutely. Living above my means? Absolutely. And then the housing crash came, the refinance era, where, they were seemingly giving away free money and all of that. Went through that too, so, to say that I've lived a couple lives
Yeah.
is an understatement. But if I had to do it all over again, I'm telling you, man, I mean, I loved every single minute of it. You can't quantify, what it means to live in Europe, for half the year for 13 years, like,
Yeah.
and travel around the world and all of that. I mean, and one of the things that I try to impress upon my athletes now is that, it may not be the financial payoff, while you're in it, but what you're going to learn in terms of life lessons,
Mm.
now no one can tell me, what Paris is. No one can tell me what the London experience is. Like I've lived it. I've Italy. Like you can go down the line. Um, yeah, I mean that is an education that you can't pay for.
It's a different time now than it was back then. And one of the things with me that I've been grateful for is I've been able to be around guys like Donovan and Maurice Green and those guys, right? And Trell Kimmins and Bernard Williams and all of the sprinters. And so they would tell me all of the stories and all of the gambling that they would do back then, all fun and games, right? But the competitive feel and the competitive nature. What was that like when you were over on the circuit jumping against some of the people that you probably seen on TV as you were this young talented guy coming up now who is jumping 850, 860, and you're like, wait a minute, this young cat is on my hip, right?
Yeah.
Did they say anything to try to disrupt you? Like, what was the climate like back then when you were going and jumping?
So I mean, in retrospect, like the time that I was competing was the Primo Nebbiolo era.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about an era where um, the top athletes were being catered to. The Merlene Audis, the Linford Christies, the Donovan Baileys, the Maurice Greens, the Mike Conleys, the Mike Powells, the Carl Lewises. They got special treatment. And it pretty much stretched from where they got to live as opposed to everybody else, where the special treatment they got at the track. I mean, they were allowed to warm up on the infield, right? We had to go to the warm up area.
You had to go in the back.
Right? We had to go to the call room, right? Like, and it was like a broken record. You get to the meet, you see them on the start list, right? And you're like, all right, yes, here we go.
Yeah.
Get to the warm up area, you're looking around, and they're not here. What's going on here? So all of a sudden your hopes start getting up, you start feeling good, get to the call room, you're in a tunnel, you're walking into the track.
Yeah.
They already have their marks down, just sitting there chilling, just standing at the long jump pit, like, hey,
You just getting here.
that was what it was like, and the idea was the mentality was, I'm here, you're trying to get what I have, right? And when you talk about the long jump era, I could talk about this ad nauseum, and it drives me nuts right now.
Yeah.
But you have to understand, like in 93, 28, it was 850, 853, 846. I was third with 830 something. It took 808 meters to make the final at nationals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that era of NCAA jumpers, myself, Eric Walder, Dion Bentley, Roland McGee, I mean, Craig Hepburn, I could go down the line. It's one of the most unmatched groups of athletes that competed against each other. And then moving on to the professional life. And who did we have to emulate? The two greatest long jumpers in the world were still in their prime. So we had that to look at. It was not good enough to jump 840. It just wasn't good enough. 850 wasn't good enough, right? The standard was there every single time we went out there. So in my opinion, it's something that's really missing now in the long jump in particular, because the long jump requires a certain element of madness, certain element of, just losing yourself, right? If you know that it's going to take 870, 880, then in practice, 820, you're not coming out of practice feeling good about yourself, right? Nowadays, If you're 840, you're in for a medal, guaranteed, right? 830 is in for a medal, guaranteed. So there isn't that impetus to push the envelope, and it doesn't take it, it's not a matter of just having one. You've got to have 5, 6, 7, 8 different athletes that are, you know, in that area. So, but yeah, it's definitely something that was very prevalent in that era, and it was very, very, very intense. Like walk into a room and you see your competitors, your hair stands up on the back of your neck, and you're just like, oh, there, and you're like, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Last few questions, coach. I have about four more. But you just talked about going into the room and you seeing all these people there and your neck standing up, right? And the hair standing up. Was there a meet that you were like, you know what, man, I can compete with any of these guys. Yeah, they're jumping, but I'm jumping too. What meet was that for you that you said, man, I can beat all of these guys?
yeah. So, um, I mean, I would say it was 1994. Um, what was the name of the city? We were in Austria. It was up in the hills, and it was one of Mike Powell's favorite places to jump. And little small meet, like it was just like a almost kind of like a ski town type area. Um, so I'd come off the USA Championships, felt good there. So I get there and I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling like, all right, Mike, we're about to have a battle here. And I ended up beating him by a centimeter or two. Like he
Mm,
came down on his last jump and I thought it was pretty close. But it was the first time that I'd ever beaten him,
mm,
right? And I ended up beating him one more time that year. But for me, because he was such a high profile athlete, having broken the world record, all of that, I never felt that I was in that league until I actually beat him, you know. And that pretty much catapulted my 1994 campaign, and actually that year I ended up um, we went head to head quite a bit, and it came down to the Berlin. Um, I think it was still Golden Four back then, but I ended up fouling out
mm.
because I wanted to beat him so bad that I just tried too hard. But that was the year. That was the year that made me feel like I belong in this upper echelon, in the top jumpers in the world.
And that's the thing is you've always said on many times before you wanted to jump, right? You didn't really want to sprint like that, and it just so happened, right? And I want to go to 1996 where you kind of this is where you started the sprinting part of it, taking it more seriously with working with Dan Paff and Donovan Bailey and Bruni Stern in that group. And this is where I started hearing about you because everybody would say, oh man, this is the group that Dan had back this and then. And then they would say, oh man, don't think that all jumpers can sprint and this and that. And so, but I want to talk a little bit about that, but also that year in general too, because from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but you lost your mom that year as well too. Um,
Yes,
what
yes,
what
yes.
what was that like? Because coach, that's two different transitions.
Oh yeah.
That's transitioning to a new group, new space. Dance program is a little bit different than most,
Hmm. Hmm.
but also one of your biggest supporters, the woman that brought you in life, is
Yeah.
transitioning out as well too. How were you balancing that? Did you ever feel like lost a little bit about at all?
Yeah. The 96 Olympics was the Olympics that was supposed to be my coronation. 92 was the, hey, go ahead, have the experience, see what it feels like, come out of it and let's just rebound from that. And so, 95, I'm going number 4, number 2, number 4, 3 years in a row. Come around to 96, and I start getting sciatic issues to the point where it was debilitating. Like I couldn't even sleep. Crawling out of my bed, and just can't seem to get it right. So get to the Olympic trials, and I haven't really had a good setup in terms of competitions, and I ended up missing the final by 1 centimeter in
Stings.
Atlanta, and it really set me back. Now at the same time, my family had planned to be in Atlanta. They ended up going anyway, and that turned out to be the last time that we were together as a family. Um, but yeah, when she passed away, when my mom passed away in August that year, I mean, it literally, as they say, knocked me for six.
Yeah.
I was completely lost. Like in terms of why I wanted to do the sport, um, I could not figure out like, okay, now what? Now what am I going to do? So I made a decision, and it coincided with meeting Donovan on the circuit. Um, I had no idea at the time that Donovan was recruiting me. Remember now, Blast Off had
Robert Esme. Yep.
right, so he needed another leg for that 4x1. And I don't know if he knew what my situation was or my connections to Canada. My grandmother immigrated back in, I mean, it was probably in the 60s. So I had that connection to Canada. So anytime if I really wanted to become a citizen,
Could have made it happen.
easily. So anyway, so I ended up meeting Dan. So I made the decision to leave Houston, to leave the coach that coached me to age 60 plus, to go somewhere to hide.
Mm.
Like I literally wanted to uh, just get away. And I didn't want the pressure. Um, I didn't want to have to deal with it. So my mindset was, let me go somewhere where there's a giant and I can kind of hide behind that curtain for a while until I find myself. That was the main reason why I made the move. Now, inside of that, meeting with Dan, I said, hey, I don't want to sprint. I'm not here. That's not my thing, right? I will, I will do the training, but that's not what I'm here for. So, you know, in my opinion, what Dan did um has to be, I mean, one of the best coaching jobs I can ever think of someone doing. To to hear an athlete tell you, this is not what I want to do, and then still coach the athlete to do it
Yeah. Yeah.
without saying anything. So understand that fall, I'm working in with the guys, everything is great, we're doing the workouts, and I'm putting up numbers that Bruni's putting up, that Donovan's putting up, that Vince is putting up, and I'm comparable to what they're doing. And imagine being a coach that can't tell an athlete, hey, just so you know, you're world class. You're
Mm.
a world class sprinter. None of that happened. There was no conversation about it at all. So fast forward to 97, um, first race was at El Paso, UTEP. And I think 10:05 flashed up on the clock.
You were
And
stuck then.
I'm looking around like, hold up. you know, next race, 10-0, you know, and inside of that, I start to notice a different in Donovan's approach to me.
Mm.
Always showing up a little bit later.
Yeah.
We're not doing as many block starts and training sessions together. I'm like,
What happened?
what's going on, right? Prefontaine, 97. You know, I've got Mike Marsh, John Drummond, Leroy, Maurice Green. He had just made the move to work with John Smith. And yeah, again, no idea what was happening. I crossed the line and I'm like, I didn't just win this race, did I?
Mm.
So again, all these things are happening, all these blessings, all these, and I'm just going, I want a long jump. Like, what are we doing here? Um, Now, as far as the long jump was concerned, rhythm, everything
Was
gone.
off. Yeah.
Couldn't see the board, couldn't, no, like all of that timing that I'd spent, 10 years of my life perfecting. Now I'm running upright. I'm not sitting and loping,
Mm.
all of that stuff. And yeah, I wasn't prepared for that. Um, get to USA Championships that year, first round, Dan tells me, hey, get to 60, see where you're at, survive, advance. Okay. Gun goes off. I see John Drummond out of the corner of my eye. He's just a little bit ahead of me. I said, I'm just going to latch on to him,
You just ride the coattail. Just ride.
just ride his coattail. 992 flashes up on his name, and I'm going, no, 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 hold up.
What just happened?
996.
Uh-oh.
I walk over to Dan. I'm like, Dan, I just broke 10 seconds. Like, what is
Yeah.
this? And he, at that point, says to me, wait till they see you in the semi. I'm like,
Mm.
what?
You knew this and you didn't tell me before.
The whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Wow.
Now, at
Wow.
that point, I separated myself. I had to go for a walk. I had to go get some air. I'm going over my head. This man just told me that there's more to come, right? Again, it was not something that I wanted. It was not something that I, wanted to do. Um, get to the semi, of course, shoulders come up, everything's tight. Now I'm trying to run fast. 10-17, don't make the final.
Mm.
But I ended up running for the rest of the year. I stopped jumping in the middle of 97 and ended up number 9 in the world that year, averaged 10:09 that
Wow.
year.
Wow. But you're a jumper. Jumper though. You're a jumper.
So what I will say about that is that basically, you know, if you are blessed, if you are anointed with an ability, you can try and hide it as much as you want, but it's kind of like, trying to put a hand over a flashlight. It's going to come out. It's going to manifest itself somewhere, and I spent that year trying to suppress, that light. That's essentially what I did. And, by the time I got to the end of the 97, I had meat promoters looking at me like, hey, if your agent comes to me and says, I've got Kareem Street-Thompson, the long jump sprinter, I'm taking him in the sprints.
Mm. Wow.
And yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. And that was already you had already had an 850, 860 mark on there, and that's
exactly.
crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
And if I have two more questions, Coach. You talked about you went there to hide. Externally, you were found, right? But internally, as a man at that point who was dealing and grieving with the loss, what did you find about you?
Um, I found out that up until that point, my whole goal in life was to please other people.
Wow.
That
Wow.
was literally what I lived for. And that experience really taught me how to focus on myself, my well-being, my mental state, physical state, all of that. That's what really forced me to start to focus internally. Why am I out here beating myself up to go over there and perform? Well, it's for me. I want to do this. And it was about a 3 year period. Um, you know, end of 96, 97, 98, 99 was where things I kind of emerged out of that, you know. But yeah, it was a very, very tough time. And a lot of the communication I had with my mom was nonverbal.
Yeah.
We, you know, we never, it wasn't a, you know, it was one of those things where if there was anything that she had said about me, it was to someone else, and that person would come back and tell me.
Yeah.
It was never kind of face to face, like, no. And, I mean, to this day, every time I go home, every time I go back to Cayman, someone will stop me in the street and go, Valerie Thompson's son, right? Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. That's me. That's me.
So I'm constantly reminded. Um,
Coach, we'll close with this. I understand those sentiments very well, especially being born in Jamaica. For some reason, they just don't have it in them to say, I love you more than a couple times per year. but it. But again, it's always good to hear. But for some reason, they just hold on to it.
yeah, yeah,
But
exactly,
there's
exactly.
a separation sometimes between what we do and who we are, and it can be tough to mesh sometimes. When you look at your professional career and your present coaching career, what do you want to be most remembered for when you're sitting on the couch, 70 years old, just thinking about life?
Mhm.
What do you hope that people take from you when your name is mentioned?
At the end of the day, I want to be known as someone that uh, tried to make a difference in this world, one individual at a time, and someone that uh, at least helps somebody understand their place on this planet, why things are the way they are. Um, I don't know. It's I when I would not wish, what was dropped on me
Mm.
on anyone. And what I mean by that is when you're the first to do something for an entire nation, right? First, um, world junior medalist, first world championship medalist, first Commonwealth medalist, first Pan Am medalist, like when you're the first, it's not an enviable position because,
Yeah.
you know, there's still that newness to it, right? And I will forever be the first, right? So what I have ended up doing for a lot of the younger athletes is that I'm trying to help them now navigate their way through that the maze and the potential potholes that they could fall into, and trying to make sure they didn't make the same mistakes I did. Um, and yeah, I want people to know that I was a servant to the people forever, and I don't think that will ever change. And yeah, I mean, I'm quite okay
Yeah.
leaving this planet knowing that that was what I'm going to be known for.
Coach, thank you again so much for your time, man. It's I could probably talk for another 2 hours. Like, I always
Yeah.
got a million different questions, but honestly, man, any student athlete that comes to work with you, man, I hope there's a lot of information that you give out, a lot of information that we all have, and I think sometimes the younger generation, they just don't take the time to ask. You know what I'm saying? And and Dan will say it all the time. It was like, you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers.
Yeah.
And so, Coach, thank you again so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure I'll see you pretty soon down the road at some point.
Absolutely, man.
Coach, have a good rest of your day. God bless, man, and we'll be in touch soon.
All right. Take care, man.